Well, welcome. Good to have you back. Did you get a lot of value out of the Idaho adventure?
Yes, it helped me sort of think through some things and reprioritize some things and realize what was important and so it's beautiful. It's beautiful out there. I was in the Wood River Valley and got to spend a lot of time just watching the sunrise and yeah, especially with writing, it sort of helped me realize that I needed to focus a little bit more on a couple pieces at a time instead of trying to scattershot 6 zillion. And I think I'm getting to the point where I realize maybe I should try and forget all the lit mags and just write for myself. And then, when I feel it's ready to go is when the time is to submit instead of what I used to do, which was, oh, maybe I could slap something together for this call that, you know, the submission window ends in 2 hours. I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah,
I need to think through pieces and work on them. So, um,
that sounds great.
you know, yeah. And then, of course, getting them to a state where I can send them to my ideal reader, which is you, by the way. I do.
Really?
It's just listening to your refill, as I'm sure all of our listeners have, and thinking, yeah, that's art. Yeah, that's art. Yeah, that's art. Yeah, that's art.
That's very
Yeah, that's
very
art.
kind of you. But
It's
yeah,
30 years, 30 years of art.
well, I'll tell you the joy of putting that refill together was the description of my ideal reader that I kind of shared with folks. Sounds like a pretentious tool, so I don't know. I don't know, man. I think there's so many different ways that we can approach the work, and it's just got to be fun. That's the thing I keep
Yeah.
learning because we're here kind of winding down season three, about to go on hiatus, so we can focus on the work and then come back fresh for season four with some new topics and maybe some new guests. But for me, for the longest time, it just hasn't been as enjoyable as I would like it to be. But writing about writing has been delightful. So I don't know whether I should be taking my own mental advice. I wanted to ask you that. I gravitate towards things that are fun, and I do kind of bounce around from thing to thing a little bit. But when I find something that's super satisfying, super enjoyable, I kind of latch onto it for years. And so I designed board games for 7 years, and I'm still doing it. I really thought that part of my creative expression was over, but every time I start really trying to focus on writing fiction, it kind of pulls me back, especially since we've got so many. Oh, there's notoriety now. It's weird. So just for folks who aren't aware, the board game company that I started with a couple of friends of mine is called Uplink Underground Games. We designed what is arguably one of the best pro football simulations that exists, and it's weird compared to whatever the other games that are on the market, right? And it uses really modern board game mechanisms. It's super simple to play, and the simplicity kind of hides or masks the amount of mathematical modeling that's actually in play. And so I think a lot of people who are accustomed to games they grew up with in the 60s and 70s that are heavy chart and dice games look at our game and go, well, that's a kid's game. And it isn't. And so anybody who gives it a fair shake plays it and goes, oh man, this thing is awesome. So enough people are now playing it that we're starting to get noticed. And it's like just at the moment where I go, okay, well, that's done. Now I can go write. We're starting to get noticed. So that's good, but it's also pulling me away. And I'm very comfortable letting it pull me away. And that's what I wanted to ask you about. Like, what should I do? Fix me, Tim. This is the theme of season three. Tim fixes art. So, I don't really know what to do. I want to express myself creatively through writing. I have enjoyed some of the output, and I think I've learned some really valuable lessons through season three, which I guess we could talk through, because it's like, hey, we're about to wrap this up and kind of take a good hard look at what we're doing and do it better, and come back and share, newfound things with the folks. but like I feel like I'm on the cusp of both things. Like they're both about to kind of ramp up, and I feel like I have to kind of choose one or the other. What do you think? I mean, because you have multiple disciplines of creative expression as well, so I'd love to hear your take on this.
I don't think that you have to choose one or the other. I mean, here's the thing. Yes, I have a couple different disciplines that I go through. Um, Having just done the actor track as someone at the Liberty Theater Company in Idaho, that was really, really nice, but I wasn't expecting it. And so I feel that one of the things that I'm trying to tune into, I'm reading through Rick Rubin, I'm seeing a lot of Rick Rubin, I'm talking about Rick Rubin a lot. So, of course, the algorithms are showing me Rick Rubin. So, one of those things that I'm trying to tune into is what do I feel like being today? I know that there are works that excite me. I think, it was Andrew Lloyd Webber. No, it was Frank Lloyd Wright, one of those three name guys. Someone asked Frank Lloyd Wright, what is your favorite project? And he replied, whatever's on my desk right now, because he was excited about, something new and the project that he was currently working on. Personally, I'm trying to be better at, I talked just a few minutes ago about not trying to be so scattershot. I'm so excited about 16 different pieces that I've got right now, but trying to maybe whittle that down and say, what are the ones that I like the most? These are the three things that I want, so that when I wake up, I sort of try to tune into which of those three writing projects are drawing my focus, are drawing my attention. Maybe I spent a couple days away from piece two, and I'm like, oh, you know what? That might be a good thing to go back to, because I think I could look at it with a little bit of a fresh eye from a couple of days perspective and see what's going on. So I'm personally trying to tune into a little bit more of what is drawing my attention. Now you have a different situation because you have it's a passion. It's something that you really enjoy doing that's becoming a business, which
Right.
is
Yeah.
fantasy football. And perhaps there are two different ways to approach that. So instead of saying, I have to be a writer, I can't do this anymore, I think that you can say, I'm excited about writing and I want to get into that. I'm going to carve out some time for that. And also be someone who is in this board game atmosphere. And sometimes what I do is I'm like, okay, well, I either have to be an actor today or a writer today. And maybe within that, for you, it's not so binary in that term, but within that role as a board game business person, are the goals or the things that I need to do, the things that I need to accomplish within the board game realm, are those creative or are those administrative? So in
Yeah.
other words, if you have something new coming out and you have to A, make sure the artwork is done, B, make sure that, Louis has the update that he promised me that he was going to give me, those sort of administrative duties, those are easy to tackle that make you feel accomplished in that direction. And then if it's a creative thing, well, maybe that needs a little more scheduling. And I'm not saying that the creative thing needs more scheduling than the administrative thing, but for me, there's less brain space doing administrative stuff because it's a simple checklist of to-dos. The creative, you need to sit and you need to dream, you need to think, you need to investigate yourself, and sort of that creative process. You need to, it takes a little bit of cranking, like a Model T Ford for me,
Yeah.
So, I'm always going to be someone that's like, no, don't choose one or the other. Just try and figure out how to do both.
Well, that's what I've been
And
doing. Yeah,
yeah,
and the pull that it has, and by the way, none of this is really a complaint. I'm just sort of wrestling
yeah,
with it because I feel very fortunate to have enough free time that I could carve out of my normal day to day to apply to something that I genuinely care about and get a lot of satisfaction out of, that I can share with my friends, that people are starting to recognize and say, hey, this is a really cool thing. Like, all right, not everybody gets that. So I'm not complaining at all. I'm just trying to figure out,
yeah.
should I be holding myself to this standard of, hey, you said you were going to write and you're using this other thing as an excuse not to do it? Is it really an excuse? And that's what I'm just sort of
Oh,
working
right.
through. And, the reason I bring this up is I think there's probably a lot of commonality out in our listenership where people have competing priorities and they're just trying to figure out, should I feel guilty for not writing? And the answer is sometimes, you know,
Yeah, right.
and it's probably being able to look in the mirror and be really honest with yourself about, am I really busy? Do I have other competing priorities that really do take precedence? Or am I just scared to go do the work? And
Right.
that's
Right.
it. And I really think for me, because it's a kind of a tyranny of the urgent thing right now. In August, late August, we have a giant board game. It's like a convention. It's not giant by convention standards, but it's a big deal for us because the majority of the products that we've put out, just by happenstance, are in this this American football space. And it's just such a niche audience. It's hard to reach those folks. And, most of the people in that space are expecting things to be a certain way that kind of mimics what they saw in their youth. And also, it's not, even within the hobby board game market, which is already kind of a small market comparatively, this is like a sliver of that's almost a second cousin, so it's just like,
Yeah.
but anyway, the fact that we've got this event at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in late August that targets the exact demographic that we've been trying to reach for years is huge. And we were invited to participate. That's what was so exciting. They reached out to
Oh,
us and
wow.
said, please come showcase your game alongside these other games that we've invited. And I'm like, that'd be great. Because and I've done a couple of podcasts to promote the event. And they asked me, and they're 2.5 hour long podcasts about breakaway football. And I'm like, please bring it on. I could talk about this thing all day. But the goal there was just to showcase all the work and the kind of the design strategy and the approach that we've taken. And it has been really energizing. So I'm super motivated to make this event as good as it can be. And I'm really excited about it. And it is pulling focus from what I'm doing. But I think it's only because that's coming up. Like right now, today's the July 28th when we're recording this. So it's under a month away. So I'm all hands on deck trying to make sure that we have enough components, enough coverage as far as people who know the game so that when folks come up and want a demo or want a description, that somebody's there to service their needs. It can't just be me and my two partners. Then we've got that. So it's like, it's been great. So I feel really energized by it. And I just wanted to confirm with you that I shouldn't be guilty that I'm not writing as much because this thing is kind of a short-term, high-profile need.
No, I think, maybe it's a bigger question. We obviously are talking about writing here. We are writers ourselves. But there's a higher service that we're paying to the creative side of us, so maybe it's a little bit bigger, than just writing here. You are fulfilling a creative desire, which is the board game. And I think that does take precedence over whatever our podcast was about. If we were talking about how to play the low E note on a guitar for 3 seasons, but there was something else, it's just about the creativity at the end of the day and feeling that you have an outlet for what is interesting to you, what really, gets your motor going, and I think that is very important because it is all part of that creative output. And so this breakaway football has been part of your life for so long and you're so excited about it. By all means, no, you shouldn't
Yeah.
feel guilty about not writing. You want to write, you're not scared to write. It's just that at this time in your life, there is something that's taking your focus away from it. And that's completely fine. And I think that we have to start investigating, like, why do you feel guilty? Is it because you told yourself that you're a writer but you're not feeling that you're doing it? Or you know is it because of any other reasons? And
Yeah, I
I
don't.
think that maybe I think sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say I don't really feel guilty, but
Oh,
I
good,
I
good,
can I
good,
can
good.
wait until you finish your thought, and then I'll say that. But I just want to let you know
Well,
I don't
I
feel good.
think
That's what makes me feel guilty is that I don't feel guilty.
right. Well, here's the thing: the only thing that you can hold yourself accountable for is if you're not doing the writing for the wrong reasons. So, in other words, if you're too scared, yes, maybe you can, feel guilty because you're like, no, I need to work through it. And that's the thing that we want to try and use guilt for, is a motivator. We don't want guilt to put too much on our shoulders that we're like, oh man, I can't just, this is, which by the way is exactly what I end up doing. So do as I say, not as I do. But like, we want to use guilt as a motivator. And I think it's about trying to tap into that thing where the creative impulse, or as we have said before on the Tiffin, the muse, answering that muse in whatever way that gets us excited to do it. That makes us like, oh, I cannot wait to get at fill in the blank. Whether it's a new way that you want to play your tennis game. By the way, I don't know where that example came from. Or a new way, that you want to write, you want to approach a story, or a new way that you want to approach the rule book for your board game. Whatever is that impulse that's driving you to create, that gets you excited to get into it. I think that's the thing that we're looking for.
Yeah.
And as long as you're capitalizing on that, I think that you can feel guilt if you want to capitalize on it and you go do something else that subverts that. And it's funny because I was about to say, and instead you go and watch a movie. Well, I don't want to make you feel guilty, because maybe you need to watch a movie. Maybe you need to decompress. There's a lot of stresses that we have from the outside world that hit us all of the time. I would feel guilty if I was just sitting there for 2 hours scrolling through TikTok. But you know what? Sometimes you need that. You need to just sort of disassociate so that you can kind of get everything out, everything that's sort of causing you stress out there can be swept out so that you can have your creative space internally clear and free to work.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, and that's what I was hoping you would say. And that is also what I've been thinking. Let's be honest. As we talk about creativity, because it's really kind of the thrust of this episode. I am a person who needs to be creative, and my goal is always to create something new. And I seem to have latched onto it in the board game space because a modern approach to a football board game, it has such a small potential target audience. Nobody's bothered to do it yet. And so when we stepped in and said, let's try, really the whole goal was, I don't know if you're familiar with a game called Stratomatic Football. It's an old school, very fun game. I played it as a teenager, but it takes like 3.5 hours to play. And it has all these player cards and whatnot. It's just a very onerous system. And so the goal was 7-8 years ago, I said, let's see if we can cut Stratomatic in half from a playtime standpoint. Let's just make something that gives you the flavor of being a head coach, where you have to make crunchy decisions and agonize over things. It really feels like football, but it only takes 90 minutes to play. And so it took us about 9 months to get that basic framework. And then we've been putting out expansions for years now. We've got 42 franchises, a weather expansion where you can play in wind, rain, and snow. This thing is huge and it works. It's fantastic. And that's what gets me going. So, the reason I bring this up is so that I can kind of showcase to folks the creative side of my brain has been firing for 8 years now on this product. And that's one of the reasons when people encounter it, they say, oh my God, such a labor of love. Oh, somebody really, cared for this and nurtured this, because it's insane how much, supporting content there is and how much time and effort it obviously took to get it where it is. And that pumps me full of pride and it makes me very happy. But the satisfaction of it really was sharing it with my friends and being able to participate in the design process and the discussions around how to model or how to gamify, history with my friends. And that was the fun. So then I look at my writing, and what I've noticed is, certainly in season 2, but also in season 3, the stuff that I've been writing is higher quality than pretty much anything I've done before, but I'm not really enjoying it. And I kind of don't like it. So it's very competent. It's very polished, but I'm not eager to show it to people. And that should be an indicator that I'm not doing the right thing. So I think what I've discovered through season 3 is that the newness of the thing, the reason I want to be creative, is to create something that has not existed before. And by taking a very straightforward, hyper-realistic point of view and writing uniform straight line motion fiction that works and it's fine, I don't even want to put my name on it. Like, so I think maybe I'm a jerk for saying that, but I think it's time for me to get really weird and just go over the top and be more creative in my approach to the writing, because I've kind of proven to myself, okay, you can write traditional realism. Congrats. You don't want to. You don't even want to share that with people, but you can do it. All right, great. So now let's go find something new. And, new means weird. New probably means that I will artificially shrink my audience, my potential audience. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever going to be a commercial success, period. But I really want to write something that is so different that people almost go, what in the world is this? And that it might
Yeah.
take time for, the zeitgeist to catch up with what I've expressed. It's so funny to hear. I'm sure you've seen this, Tim, because you've done a lot of microfiction publication, but there's plenty of online journals who point back to Donald Barthelme as
Oh yeah.
their sort of shining light. And I'm like, I was doing that 25 years ago. Damn, I should have just kept at it, so
Yeah.
so I
Well,
feel like
yeah.
I feel like it's possible for me to branch out in a new direction that nobody else has really tried or succeeded at, and to be successful at it, even if I'm not recognized for it. I kind of don't care. I just want to do something new and cool.
As long as, and this is just the devil's advocate, as long as you're not using the term something new to just be crazy for crazy's sake, new for news sake, something that's, and the only reason that I say that is because when I was younger, there was such an onus that I put on myself to be to reinvent the wheel, to do something that no one's ever done, to do something that is new and innovative and is going to just put me at the top of the heap, and everybody's going to be just, oh, it's just Tim Goodwin's the greatest thing. No, it's not going to happen. There's nothing new under the sun. So I would just make sure that for myself, I really appreciate that. Like, I want to try something new. You're saying I want to try something that's different, something that is going to use it to shrink your own audience because of what you're trying. I know, because I know you. Gosh, how am I going to say this word? Organically, it's real because that's what you enjoy. And like you said, you've been interested in Donald Barthelme for 25 plus years, and that's the kind of writing that really excites you. But I think that there are some folks who are out there who are just going to try and do something that they don't connect with in order to be seen as new and different. Does that
Yeah.
make
No, it
sense?
does. I think
Yeah.
let me try to say it differently, and you tell me if I'm hitting the mark. You want to be authentic. Just to
Yes.
do something just wacky to get noticed is different from trying to do something creatively new. And look, it might just be new to me. There's
Yeah.
a great story from the board game space. My partner, Ben Jennings, had this kind of glittering jewel on the hill idea. And he's like, I really want to make a 4X space game. And 4X is, I forget what the X is standing. It's explore, expand. I forget. But it's basically like if you've ever played the game Civilization, the computer game Civilization. It's a little bit like that on a board. Where you actually do expand and the board kind of grows, and usually it's a combat theme, and you kind of have to, establish your territory, and then you might fight with other factions or whatever. It doesn't matter. Anyway, he had made a bunch of notes. He started designing this game that was very large and intricate, and I'm like, wow, that is a huge undertaking. And then about 6 months later, he said, yeah, I'm not working on that anymore. And I'm like, why not? He said, because it already exists. It's called Eclipse. And I'm like, really? So we looked it up, and sure enough, it shared a lot of the mechanisms that he was in a vacuum. He wasn't aware of that game, but independently, he's like, oh, well, if I were going to create a 4X game, I would want it to do this and this and this. And that game checked a lot of the same boxes. There's another guy I met, again, through board games, who had wanted to design, essentially, he loves Marvel. And there's a lot of good board games for Marvel on and card games, like living card games. And he wanted to design this board game. Well, I'll cut to the chase. He spent several years designing and developing this thing. And Ben and I told him, look, you're not going to get the license for this. You may want to retheme it with your own superheroes. And he's like, hey, I'll do that, because my son and I like to do that. So they have this whole game that's skinned differently from Marvel. And Marvel comes out with a game called Dagger, which is very similar to the game that he designed.
Ah,
It was eerily similar in some cases. I'm like, all right, well, to your point, Tim, yeah, there's nothing new, but new to me, sure. So like,
yes, yes.
yeah, and that's all I think from a creative standpoint. That's really all you can. No, it's not all you can do. It's really all you should aspire to do. I
Yeah,
think, and we've said this before, if you set out with the goal of reskinning Gone Girl, and publishing that under your
right.
name, you're a fraud. Like, I'm just going to say
Yeah,
it. You're a friggin'
yeah,
fraud. So,
yeah.
like, go out there and tell your own story. Don't retheme, although don't retheme Twilight. I'm pretty sure that's 50 Shades of Grey was fan fiction of Twilight, and that did pretty well. So like, but look, how are you judging success? That's the other thing about
Right.
creativity. Are you judging it purely on commercialism? If I go sell 100,000 copies of a book, does that mean I'm a success? In one way, yes, commercially,
Yeah.
but artistically, it might not be a success. What I'm saying is that a lot of people who get into writing want to be commercial successes, and they want to be notable, have the notoriety that comes with being a famous author. If that's your goal, pursue it.
Yeah.
My goal is different. My goal is I want to be artistically, really cutting edge. I want to be cool and probably ahead of my time. Am I talented enough to do that? Probably not, but I'm still going to try.
Yes, exactly. Well, now hold on a second. What about a board game where you try to expand and you try to take over things? So it's like, what is that, Risk?
Oh,
But instead of getting the board, what if you just tried to set up the metrics so that you would play in your house? So in other words, first you do the tabletop and you break the tabletop down into territories. And then to expand it, you move to the rug and then to the mantle and then to the couch. Like you could have an infinite playing space.
sure.
You're like, okay, well, here we are. We're on our third week of playing this game. We're at my grandma Llewellyn's house, and we're gonna take over her cupboard. Sure, it's already been done.
No, I don't. I
Um,
don't think so. That's and hey, let's be straight. I know you were just messing around there, but let's be straight. Some things haven't been done because they suck.
yeah.
So like,
So you're telling me? So my future as a board game designer. That's it. That's it.
not talking about you at all directly, but no. But seriously, like maybe some of the things that I would try to do as a person who desires newness over conventionalism, I might stumble into something that's terrible. And
Yeah,
I need to have enough of a creative soul to recognize, and really enough of a clear eyed view of what I do to recognize when something is terrible. I guarantee you I've done terrible things. I have a hard drive full of them.
yes,
Yeah. So, oh, and by the way, side note, I think I'm going to start deleting some of that stuff. I
oh,
now understand why writers on their deathbed go, please burn all my shit. I mean, I get it now. Some of it is just terrible, and I would not want my name on it anymore. Just garbage. So yeah,
yeah,
that might happen. But overall, reading my old work has been really revealing because I had an incorrect view of myself. I had kind of told myself a story over and over again that was slightly incorrect. And every time I retold it to myself, it became more hyperbolic to the point where my understanding of what I used to be was pretty different from me as a grown person who can read my work without any sort of emotional attachment to it. I was wrong. My point of view about my old self was wrong. And to the
yeah,
point where some of that stuff I kind of want to go back and try again, and not to kind of revise it because I'm not that same person, and I don't know why I wrote half of what I wrote, but some of it's really compelling, and I'm like, I could probably spin that in the direction that I see now. So during the hiatus, I think I'm going to do that. I've also fundamentally decided I need to stay short with the word counts. I need to stay brief. Part of
yeah,
my challenge with the novel is that I just don't have the staying power for it. So I'm going to
yeah,
purposely pivot back to short works because I can get the whole movement done and several revisions and kind of get the language tight and honed, and that's what I care about. So
yeah.
that's something else I've learned from season three.
I think that it's great that you are embracing the weirdness and want to go in that direction because if you think about it, your life as a game designer, your life as a training facilitator is so word specific. It has to be so you're trying to get folks, you're hiring me You know what I mean? You're hiring me, and somebody's got to train a dummy like me to know how to do something. And so that language is so structured. That world seems so like, it has to please the boss all the way down to, the higher. You're trying to train people through the entire cycle of their employment. And so I think that it's such a great release. It must feel so nice to be like, watch me just throw all of that in the garbage now so that I could focus on this piece and get weird with it. Maybe that's not what you're doing, but for me, Tim, knowing you, Art, it seems like that's such a nice thing to be able to do, which is, I'm taking off the suit and tie of my work writing. And now I'm going to put on the Bermuda shorts of insanity.
My friends make fun of me. I basically wear khaki slacks and polo shirt for every occasion, anywhere I go. Hey, we're going to go take
Uh-huh.
a walk in the park, like to exercise. And guys show up in shorts and, tennis shoes and t-shirts, and they're ready to walk and sweat. And I show up in khakis and a polo and tennis shoes, and I walk and sweat, right? Like that's just what I do. Let's go play some football. Back in the day, I might show up in shorts, probably, but it's still polo. Like I just don't.
Yeah.
I used to wear suits 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I used to wear suits to work, and I'm of an age now where I don't have to. And
Yeah.
business culture has changed. Things have gotten
Yeah.
just fundamentally more casual as we've progressed. But anyway, back to the creativity of it all. As long as I'm being inspired by what I'm doing, as long as I care
Yeah.
about what I'm doing, I think that's the goal. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that we can carry forward toward the listeners out there in the world. As long as you care about
Yeah.
what you're doing, even if it's reskinning somebody else's work. Because remember Scott Farron, when we did the interview with Scott, he actually encouraged his younger writers that he teaches to model their initial writing after their heroes, because it helps provide a blueprint of here's work that you like. And if you sort of retype their work, you may start to see some of the joists and load bearing beams of how their work
Right.
functions, and it just
Yeah.
helps you be a better architect. So like that part of my life is over. I mean, I did that pretty directly with Bartholomew, and I think through the refills, I've been able to explore what I liked and what I didn't like about his work without being disparaging or critical of him. I just, there's pieces of it I just didn't get, probably still don't
Yeah.
get. And that's okay. I mean, he's a better writer than I am, so we're good. But I'll just pivot in a different direction, do something different, and maybe I'll be able to stumble onto something that other people think is cool and want to read. But
Yeah.
that's the other piece I wanted to talk to you about, Tim, is the notoriety. I think as a younger guy in my early 20s, mid 20s, I really cared about being read. I wanted to be noticed. I wanted to get out in front of people. It was the reason to do the work, was to be held up as an example of greatness. And I don't have the same point of view now. What is your point of view on that? Because you're writing a lot, you're publishing a lot. What's your relationship with wanting to be a notable figure in literature?
Oh, I'm still struggling. Like I'm still struggling. Like I still have a lot of that. I still have, because of the time between graduating from college and when I started picking it back up right before, like in 2015, that empty time has only made me worse in trying to be recognized. And it's something that I struggle with. I of course I would love to have a bio like some of these folks that I read who are just like, oh, nominated for best of the net. Oh, they were on the Wiggly top 50. They were this, they were that, they were this. And it finally, we were talking about my being in Idaho and coming to realize some things. I feel confident enough to tell you that I'm a good photographer. I was gifted U2's Achtung Baby in 1991 or whenever it came out. It's been that long that I've forgotten. And I saw Anton Corbin's photography, which is the artwork for that record, and it changed my life. I was like, this is amazing. This photography thing is great. So ever since 1991, I have been fumbling and bumbling and mistaking and taking pictures of people, places, and things. And so here we are in 2025. 2025. What happened in the last 6 months? here we are in
That's
2024.
optimism. You're like,
Yeah, that's
here we are and what's going to be, right?
so here I am in 2024, and I feel like if you came to me and said, I need my picture taken, I'm going to be able to say, you got it. And so it finally hit me in Idaho that I've been struggling and stressing and like, I need to get published as a writer because that's what I was doing as a kid. I wrote a piece in 1986 or 87 about the NLCS where the Mets came from behind and went to the World Series and the Mets, blah, blah. And it got, my teacher was like, hey, this is a really good piece. And I was like, hey, maybe this writing thing is a writing thing. But I didn't stick to it the way that I stuck to photography. And again, like I said, I graduated with a writing degree and then got really, really scared of it and didn't write for many, many years. And so I'm like, well, if I had stuck to it, maybe I would feel that confident and not so stressed out about being recognized. I mean, I'm not a recognized photographer either. Ain't nobody had me up in their gallery. But I feel confident and I love doing photography because I feel like I'm the most me. And so I just sort of stepped away from writing for a very long time. And I'm like, oh, maybe what's ended up happening is that I stuck to photography. I made all the mistakes. I learned all the things to where I feel competent. I'm just not at that place yet with writing. And maybe I should cut myself a little fucking slack.
I think
And
so.
so,
Yeah, I think so,
yeah.
Tim.
So I very much struggle with, maybe I could put it this way. I just struggle with my bio. Yes, I've been published in places as a writer, but none of that stuff has gotten me the awards that I feel I would love to have so that I could walk in a certain circle. Let me give you a quick example. At the end, we were having a cast party at the end of Boeing, which I was just in Idaho with Liberty Theater Company. Great experience, wonderful time. And as usually happens at the end of these sorts of contracts, we were at the cast party that was after the last show. And you usually get asked, so what's next? What are you doing next? And my response was, oh, back to work and depression. And someone else that was in the cast with me was asked the same question. They had a couple of things that they were doing creatively that they were excited about. And I'm like, why aren't I there? Why don't I feel that confidence as a writer to say, well, I've got a novel that I've been trying to hack at. I think I'm going to go back and work on that. It's because, as we say in the tagline for our own podcast, the imposter syndrome is pretty big because I don't have those accolades. I haven't had somebody hand me a trophy, literally or metaphorically. And so I feel like I can't say I'm a writer yet. And that's horse poop. That's not right at all. I should just feel more confident about it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm working towards.
Yeah. I'm glad because you have more publications than I do. And, and you actually have quite a number of them in the last probably 2 years. And that's not just all of them. So I'm just looking at, since we kind of started this activity,
Yeah.
You've accelerated, not decelerated. And I think it's great. And I can definitely tell the people in the world, yes, you are a good photographer and you do make money from your photography. Don't sell yourself short. You do. So that's also pretty impressive that you can take a creative endeavor, which a lot of people, like I have a friend that I went to graduate school with, he's a really good guy. And he actually lives out, I think, in the Idaho area. He lives in the Palouse and takes some of the most beautiful outdoor landscape photographs I've ever seen. This guy's great. And I don't think he's trying to get them published or whatnot, but he's fantastic. And, you and I have a mutual friend who is an exceptional photographer who does nothing to get his work out there. So, I mean, that's where we come back to creativity is the act of being creative, self-sustaining enough that you don't need the notoriety. And I think for a lot of people, the answer is yes. And I don't know if I'm one of those people yet, but maybe I want to be. Like, I don't know. I'm swirling around my duty as a creative person to share that art with the world, and then also the humility of who the hell are you, dude? Like, just do the thing because you enjoy it. Don't worry about getting in front of people. If it's any good, it'll bubble up anyway, is kind of what I'm thinking. But I don't know. I can't stand definitively on any of this ground at this point, other than every day when I wake up, I need to do something creative, whether it's board game or whether it's landscaping or what. I have the least green thumb in the world. But like, just I need to do something creative, and I do. Otherwise, I feel like a schlub. I feel like I've wasted a day, and I hate that
Yeah.
feeling. As we talk about creativity and sort of what the goal is of the activity, that's a great way to pivot into what we've learned about season 3 and really what we're looking forward to in season 4. So I know we're going to take a hiatus. Our hiatus tends to be 1 to 2 months. It depends. I mean, we talk about it and we'll figure out what that is, and we'll go ahead and put out at least one bonus episode during the hiatus to make sure that we check in and say hi, and that when we're coming back. But Tim, I mean, I'll kick us off as far as like what I've learned in season 3. I think I've learned that I'm a short story writer and non-novelist, which I knew already, but had deluded myself into thinking that, well, if you just have enough pluck and gumption, you can do it. I don't think I have the staying power for it, but I really enjoy writing short fiction. And I've also discovered that even though my intent was to become a better short story writer of realism, and I really did accomplish that goal here in season 3, it ultimately was the wrong goal. And so I set myself a target and acquired it and said, damn, that was the wrong target. And that's okay. So if anybody else out there has also done that before, don't beat yourself up about it. Just set a new target. Because sometimes, to me, it felt like a mirage, the whole oasis thing. And you see the reflecting pool of water in the distance in the desert. And you kind of run towards it. And then you get there and you're like, fuck, it's sand.
It's more
more
sand.
goddamn sand. Right. And so that's kind of how I felt, even though it was really well written sand, but like, it's just not what I'm trying to do. So I think for me, that's what I got out of season 3. I feel very grateful that I learned that, and the experience of writing all the refills and trying to write the stories and kind of getting the feedback from you and from other people has cemented that, yes, you did accomplish something good, but it's not what you should be trying to do. Let's try something else. And so that's going to be my point for season 4. What do you feel like you got out of season 3?
To be honest with you, I think talking through some of these things that we have talked about has showcased what I'm still grappling with is fear and excuse making. I felt so good making that first draft of my Mal Noir. And so what I did after that was, look, we all have personal stuff. Things happen. Things are outside in life. And, in February, I lost our 16-year-old dog. And I think that affected me more than I thought. But it was also a little bit of a rough time at work because it was so astronomically busy. But I think I started to use those things as my old excuses for not doing. Well, I'm too busy. Well, I'm too tired. And look, those are legitimate excuses. Legitimate excuses. It's very hard, especially for me personally, to come home from a very stressful day of work and go, well, that was horrible, and I don't see any way out of this life situation. But hey, I think I'm just going to turn over here and start writing my novel. I understand that is very difficult, and it is very difficult for me to move through. And if you don't believe me, let me go get my partner. She can tell you how difficult it is to have me in a mood coming home and then
Right.
try and pivot into something that's more fun. So I think what I've learned through this season and us talking about what our expectations for ourselves are, what we feel the expectations we are upholding for others' perceptions of us as writers, I think what I was doing, I'm still hamstrung by a lot of it. But I think now that I'm being able to talk about it and move through it, it's helping me. So did I have a lot of time to work on my novel? For a second draft, I mean, heck, let's just be honest. To read my first draft, I haven't even reread my first draft all the way through, mainly because I was putting that fear in of, oh my God, I have a lot of work to do here.
Yeah.
And that's always imposing. So I think as long as I'm starting to recognize these things, I think that I can hopefully begin to schedule my life a little bit more and a little better and know where the difficult points are in my life so that I could try and wrangle that and say, here's how I'm going to approach being a writer, or not at least being a writer, but at least I think let me try and break this down a little bit more. What I would do is I have my to-do list. I've got a great Hobonichi. If you know, you know. A Hobonichi day planner. And so what I've been doing in there, I'll say is, for my to-do list for, let's say, the random Tuesday that's coming up, I'll just put Madeline Tin because the name of my, noir novel is Madeline Tin and the Chess King. And so that is a to-do list item, but it's too broad. So I think what I need to do is take it down a notch. I'm very impatient, so I want to have everything done very quickly. I'm very impatient, so I do like try to slipshod, a little bit of a short story together to get something in under a deadline. I am very impatient. So I think what I need to do is starting with my day planner, instead of just making a blanket work on novel, smaller, approachable goals. Let's reread the piece this week. Let's next week, let's sort out a sort of treatment of the novel based on that first draft and where I want it to go. Smaller, approachable items that I can do, and to just learn the how to be patient with it all. And I think that's the thing that I struggle with the most is my own impatience. I wasted a lot of time not writing, from 97 to 2015, like I always say, and I want to catch up. And I don't think I can. I think I just need to be a little bit more patient
Well,
and work
yeah.
on my voice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what you're describing sounds a lot like when a gambler gets down in Vegas and they're like, "Oh, I'm 20 grand in the hole. I got to make up that money." Like that money's gone. So, throwing good
Yeah.
money after bad. So, like that time that you just referenced is gone. You
Yeah.
cannot recover it. But what you can do
Yeah.
is use your time purposefully going forward, and you are. So, yeah, cut yourself a break. But also, I think using the day planner, that's brilliant, Tim. Being more structured with your time and trying to, set manageable goals and accomplish them in chunks. It's exactly the way productivity specialists talk about making the most use of your time. And so applying that creatively is perfect. I think that is exactly what you need to be doing. So,
Yeah.
yay, do that. We talk directly to our listeners sometimes, and I think we should do that now. Ultimately, what you've heard us do over the last however many episodes is really have these therapeutic conversations that are intended to change our minds. We're actively struggling with the right approach and we're pivoting. I mean, I listen back to some of the episodes sometimes, and even within the last couple of years, I've heard opinions that I've changed because I've tried one thing and said, no, it doesn't really work, does it? So, what I recommend to our listeners is to actually go through the same exercise that we've gone through today and think about what have I learned, and you can use season 3 as kind of a rough time frame if you'd like, but like grab whatever time frame you feel is comfortable and is applicable to your life and say, have I, what have I learned in this time? And what have I cemented as part of my process that I want to continue because I've seen it work? And what do I maybe want to try differently because I'm not perfect? I want to
Yeah.
continually improve. And if you need kind of a refresher on season 3, like if you want to use that as the time frame, the yardstick, go back and listen to the episodes. They're there. Feel free to listen to them. And actually, if you listen to them in quick succession over the course of a few weeks, they string together really nicely because we record them in order. So they don't really have the opportunity to stray too far off the trail. And use that as kind of your own mini therapy session to figure out your direction and your purpose in the creative
Yeah.
arts. So I think as we look forward to season 4, Tim, is there anything that we want to kind of strike out for on season 4? I know for me, in the break, what I think I'm going to do is write a couple of really short pieces and share them with you. And I think I'd like to put another story or two into the record and do some more feedback sessions. I think that would be really fun. I'd like to find some more folks that we could interview and see if we can get even
Yeah.
more perspectives. Is there anything that you're looking forward to in season 4?
Continuing onward, but not continuing onward to where we're repeating this season. You know what I mean? I've talked a lot
For sure.
about my struggles and hangups, and I want to see if I can listen to my own advice, pay attention to my own advice, and put my own advice in action. It's so easy. Oh my gosh, Art, it's so easy. You just grab two microphones, two guys, two people, and you just start talking about stuff. And it sounds like it's like I have answers. but I don't have answers for myself because I'm not listening to myself. So I think that's one of the things that I would like to do. And I think it's season 4. I really want to get back and tackle that novel and make it to where I can show a little bit of progress. I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm like, and then, for the season 4 finale, we just have the final discussion with the agent who says, yes, we're going to publish this book.
Right, right.
It might be that through the entirety of season 4, all I get to is a second draft, and that's okay. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Oh, well, our seasons are short, so like that would be great if you got to a second draft. Yeah.
Oh, great. Put that pressure on me. Thanks,
Yeah,
Art.
no problem. Hey, no problem. It's called motivation. I'll tell you one parting thought before we wrap up the episode. I have been paying attention to sports documentaries on Netflix and other channels are eye-opening in this one capacity. The fathers of really successful athletes push them so hard as children. And that's part of why they are so successful. But you see just as many stories on the other side of that where pushing a child breaks them. So
Yeah.
I think, they say pressure makes diamonds, right? You've heard that before.
Yeah.
Of course, pressure can break pottery too. So I wonder if the kind of last thought that we should leave with is figure out what your strength is. How much can you endure? And just make sure that you are pushing yourself just a hair beyond what you can handle. Because I think too often, if we feel like the writing is coming easily and everything is hunky-dory, we're probably not pushing ourselves hard enough. And if we feel like the world is crashing down on us and everything is terrible and I'm an awful writer and this will never work, maybe that's an indication that we're pushing ourselves too hard. So as long as we kind of calibrate the amount of strain or stress or pressure we're putting on ourselves and recognize that it's that striving for greatness, that push and desire to succeed, but not so much that it cripples us and not so little that we don't even feel it. It's got to be right at that edge of, I got to do this, I got to do this. And you're still making progress. That is the sweet spot.